Many of us sometimes feel lost. We make plans and give our best efforts, yet things don't turn out the way we hoped. There are moments when we look up at the sky and wonder why this is happening to us, especially during quiet nights when we are alone with our thoughts. The following story is about a young man named James who experienced exactly that feeling. James lived in a small village among rolling hills. He was strong, hardworking, and always carried a big dream: to leave his hometown, join wealthy merchant caravans, explore the world, and one day return successful. Every evening, under the dim light of a small lamp, he mapped out his plans, believing that if he followed the right path, his life would change. One morning, filled with hope, James packed his belongings and set off. His mother saw him off and prayed that God would protect him. But when he reached the river near the village, he discovered that the bridge had collapsed after a heavy night of rain. The rushing water had swept everything away, and the path he intended to take was suddenly blocked. James stood still, feeling disappointed and heavy-hearted. He wondered why this had to happen on the very day he began his journey. In that moment, he felt abandoned, unable to understand the meaning behind such an unexpected obstacle. After the bridge was repaired, James regained hope and prepared once again. He saved every coin, packed carefully, and held on to his dream of leaving the village. But just as he was about to depart, his younger sister came running with urgent news. Their father had fallen from a ladder and could not stand. James rushed to his father's side. The healer said it would take a long time for him to recover. James stood between two choices: pursue his dream or stay to care for his family. After some hesitation, he put away his belongings. In the days that followed, he worked tirelessly, cared for his father, and took responsibility for the household. Time passed slowly, carrying both fatigue and quiet sadness. Each night, under the familiar light, he no longer made plans, but instead sat silently, thinking about what might have been. A few months later, his father gradually recovered and could walk with a cane. Hope returned to James. He heard that a large caravan of merchants would soon pass near the village and needed helpers. He believed this was his chance. But once again, things did not go as planned. That morning, his only donkey, the means to reach the meeting point, fell seriously ill. Without it, he could not make it in time. James knelt beside the animal, feeling helpless and despairing. All his efforts seemed to be blocked at the last moment. He looked up and silently asked God why every door was closing before him. He felt small, lonely, and as though no one understood his pain. As the sun rose higher, James left his house and walked out to the fields, just to do something, to forget the heaviness in his heart. He did not yet know that in those aimless steps, a new encounter would open up, and perhaps a different path for his life would begin to form. While walking through the fields, burdened with sorrow, James saw an old woman tending the soil. Her name was Dara, a quiet person respected by many for her wisdom. Seeing his troubled face, she called him over and gently asked what was wrong. At first, James tried to hide his feelings, but soon all his pent-up disappointment poured out. He spoke of his unfinished plans, his repeated efforts that were always blocked, and his feeling that even God had turned away from him. Dara listened without interrupting. After a moment of silence, she took out 2 small seeds and gave them to James. She told him to plant one on the hard path, where people often walked, and the other near a stream where the soil was soft and moist. Then she simply said, "Come back in a few weeks." James did as she said, though he didn't understand why. He continued his daily life, working, caring for his family, and gradually his anger faded. After a few weeks, he returned to the places where he had planted the seeds. On the hard path, nothing had grown. But near the stream, a small green sprout had risen strongly. When Dara appeared, she asked him what he saw. James realized that the problem was not the seed, but where it had been planted. Good soil, water, and space had allowed the plant to grow. Dara smiled and said that life is much the same. Some human plans are like seeds on hard ground. No matter how hard we try, they struggle to succeed. But that does not mean the dream is wrong. It may be that God is guiding us to a more suitable place. Her words left James in silence. He began to understand that closed doors might not be rejection, but guidance. A gentle peace spread within him, as if he had just realized that the path he needed to follow was not always the one he had originally chosen. From that day on, a quiet but deep change took place in James. He no longer resisted what had happened, nor did he blame God as before. Instead, he began to pay attention to what was right in front of him. He continued working in the fields, repairing the house, and caring for his family. But now he also spent time tending the young plant by the stream, the seed that had taken root and was growing day by day. James pulled weeds, carried water during dry days, and protected the plant from passing animals. Season after season, the small plant grew stronger and eventually became a large tree with wide branches. Its shade spread farther and farther. Birds came to nest, children played beneath it, and travelers stopped to rest. Seeing its value, James built a simple shelter near the tree. He placed a water jar for passersby and was always ready to help anyone in need. Gradually, the place became a familiar resting stop between two villages. People began to call it James's Tree, a symbol of peace and kindness. Years later, a large group of merchants passed by that road. They were tired and their leader was seriously ill. When they saw the shade and resting place, they stopped. James brought water, shared food, and cared for the sick man. The leader was deeply moved by his kindness and said he had never seen such a warm resting place. Before leaving, he offered to send food and oil to James's family each season, in exchange for continuing to care for the place for travelers. From then on, James's life became sufficient in a simple but sustainable way. He no longer searched for a distant path, because the path had found him, bringing meaning and purpose he had never imagined. Many years passed, and James often sat beneath the wide tree, looking up at the sky through the leaves, reflecting on his life. He remembered all the times his path had been blocked: the broken bridge, his father's injury, the sick donkey. In the past, he had seen them as failures and felt abandoned by God. But now, looking back, he understood that everything had led him exactly where he needed to be. James realized that if any of his earlier plans had succeeded, he might have left the village and never created this peaceful resting place. The closed doors had quietly guided him step by step toward a purpose he could not have seen on his own. He no longer felt loss, but instead a deep sense of gratitude and peace. Under the shade of the tree, where many had stopped to rest and found relief, James understood that life does not always follow human plans. Sometimes, what we think we have lost is simply being guided into a better form. He bowed his head and silently thanked God for not letting him follow his old path, but instead opening a new and more fitting one. James's story carries a message. When things do not go as planned, do not despair too quickly. Perhaps a better plan is quietly taking shape, and God is still guiding us, even when we cannot yet see it.